We had a call before you came in. A UPS driver, I think an Amazon driver, new caller, called because he's in areas that have Trump signs on their lawns and giant Confederate flags, and he fears for his life. When he speaks to people, because most of these people are very courteous, he doesn't get a response back. We're now at a place where people used to be fake, fake polite. If you spoke to somebody, they would at least say hi back. Folks they're not even wearing the mask anymore. And I feel like because many of us are those frontline workers, many of us are those truck drivers, those delivery people, those longshoremen, we're there, we're providing the services for folk. And to have to drive up into a neighborhood with Trump signs, which are synonymous with racist right now. If you're wearing a MAGA hat, I don't care, you can't tell me anything. You are aligning yourself with racism. How do you suss that out? How do you navigate that? And it's your job. You have to do it.
So I'll give you a personal story. When I was in med school and I was doing infectious disease, actually in Brooklyn at Wyckoff Hospital, and we had a patient that was covered in swastikas. My attending physician was Jewish. Took the guy's shirt off and pants down, and it was like all this Nazi stuff tattooed on him. And I was standing there like, yo, like, look at this dude's body, right? Like, you're not going to say anything. And my attending just went around about his business. And later on in the office, I was like, yo, what do you think of this dude with the Nazi, you're Jewish, I'm black. So obviously, saying this dude is not on our side. And he really said to me, you know what he said to me? I didn't notice. And I was like, I don't know about that. And he said, but regardless, we have a job to do, right? And so if you focus on your job, don't pay attention to the other stuff that has nothing to do with your job, right? You just narrow in, keep your focus now on what you need to do and get in and out of there, because there's nothing else that you can do in that situation. And so for me, I've always thought about it that way, because I've got patients that have all types of opinions, and they come in the office, and I'm like, as soon as they start that stuff, if they do, pipe down. First of all, it's my office, so I am in a position of power. But second of all, I'm like, shut it, zip it. I don't want to hear it. This is not the place for that. For the UPS driver, for delivery man, and people, you're at work. Work is work. You keep your focus narrow. Consider yourself as an athlete. You're at the foul line. You're at the free throw line. You got to make some shots. Are you going to listen to the hecklers, or are you going to focus in on your job? Focusing on your job, do what you got to do, go home and feel good about what you had to do right there, because those people aren't your competition. They're not.
Right. Right.
They're not.
Right.
You got to keep your eyes on your own prize. Don't let yourself get dragged into the mud.
And I also, you're not selling out because you have responsibilities. Like I was just thinking, as you're talking, and that's some great advice. I know that my grandmother, who was a nurse's aide in Augusta, Georgia, for a white family, had some horrible things said to her. Was made to feel less than a human being, even though she was one of the smartest people, Julia Sweeper, that I ever knew. And I knew that as a little kid, that my grandmother was smart as a whip, reduced to having to be, a domestic worker, basically, right? And the assumptions made, which is why black people take offense when someone says, oh, you're so smart or you're so articulate, as if the very color of our skin would denote something different, and it shouldn't. But because that's the way we've been conditioned, many of us also buy into it, And that's why I make it my business to make sure that there's so many doctors and lawyers and engineers and tech millionaires and other kind of millionaires on this show that look like us, because it's not rare. I had a discussion today on a call talking about books, and they were like, well, let's have the class read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. And I said, no, we're not. We're not going to give the incoming freshman class a book about incarceration, because most black people are not incarcerated. And most of those kids are not black. So now you're framing it that this is the biggest problem in the black community. Most of us are not poor, and most of us are not in prison. And if you start the conversation there, you already are operating from a negative. Let's do something more empowering. So we're talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me. Let's give him some James Baldwin, The Fire, next time. Let's have some conversations around issues of injustice that don't start with poverty and imprisonment. But if I'm not in that room, we probably don't have that conversation. So it's important that we model for people the way that they should think about things. But I love that advice that you gave. Do your job. Focus on your job. This gentleman has a child that's 5 years old. Think about your baby and that you making this money, and those flags and that MAGA sign is not going to, if anything, I'm taking your money to feed, not just feed my baby, but give her a future.
Yeah, man. It is. I had another experience, the same kind of dilemma of consciousness with some business opportunities. And, I kind of felt like the guys that were, making this pitch to me were racist, for lack of a better term. So I was like, man, I'm not really feeling this. Like, I work too hard to go. And I had a good friend of mine from high school who's Jewish as well. And we were talking about it. And he's like, he's been in media. He's like, I'm pretty sure I probably worked for companies that were, supported the Nazis at some point. These big international conglomerates. At some point, everybody's hands was dirty. And he was like, I'm pretty sure at some point I had a boss that was like a flaming, anti-Semite or something, right? And he goes, but you got to have the money to build your soapbox before you stand on it, right? It's all fun and games to talk about how hard it is when you're outside. But when you actually have something behind you, when you've got some money, when you've got a position, Colin Kaepernick was an NFL quarterback. He brought his team to the Super Bowl. If he was just, some dude, some scrub, this doesn't go anywhere. He had to be in that position in order to make that statement. If he was just some dude that was working and said, I'm kneeling at Publix, hey, the guy in the back
right.
is kneeling. Fire him, So he had to be in the NFL. And remember, the NFL has a very long history of racism, discrimination, especially at the quarterback position. There was a time where black quarterback was, like a zebra. They're like, what? A bad black quarterback? So, he's in a position, in a employment situation where he knows the tenuousness of his circumstance. You got to be in it to win it. And at that point, he gave up a lot, too. That was it. Career over.
Yeah, but then he gained. I think Colin Kaepernick is more successful financially now than he would have been had he stayed in the league. And,
Did he know that? Could you have planned this?
No, but that's the thing. Yeah. You do what's right, and I feel like there's so many people. There's a double-edged sword with that. Like I think you need to take care of your money and you need to pay attention to certain things. I think he was boasted by having a Nike deal that Nike did not separate from him. As a matter of fact, Nike doubled down and allowed him to be able to donate $100,000 every single month. He was able to raise money to be able to donate money to black organizations for black youth, et cetera. But Nike doubled down, and his jersey was the number one selling jersey. So there were certain things that helped him have the power to be able to be like, I'm going to be okay out here on my own, not playing in the league. I think I'm going to be okay because I still got this Nike deal, and I'm making more money for Nike off the field than I would be on the field without hurting my knees and my back and my shoulders and all the other things that you probably are walking around with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's also something to be said about, all right, so you find yourself in a situation, a working environment that you feel the people around you don't value or even hostile because of your race. I'm black. I can't speak to anti-Semitism. That's not my experience. I'm Haitian. I'm black. This is what I grew up with. So I've been in those situations, a lot of those situations. Oftentimes the competitor in me says, okay, you might have me right now, but I'm going to pay attention to what's going on. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to build whatever I have to build within me, whether it's my skill set, my relationships, whatever I got to do, and I'm going to beat you. And that's just me being a competitor and saying if it's education, if that's what I got to do, all right, I'll meet you again in a year, and we'll go at it again, and maybe the situation will turn. If not, you're going to have a hard time keeping me in the situation that you believe that I should be in. I'm not going to accept it. So what's the challenge? What's the cost of entry to get to where I need to go, to get into this room? I'm going to do that. And when I get in there, I'm going to stomp all of you, And so
right.
That's my mentality. And I feel that a lot of our parents had to do that, accept really bad jobs and working situations and sometimes probably not get paid, not get paid on time or missing things, that, you know, and they had to suck it up and say, okay, this is what I got to do. But my kids, you know, when my kids get their turn, they're going to bring the heat to you. And here we are. All right? Here we are.
I had a conversation today because, you know, when I first started on this radio program, I was told there was no money, you know, for a show, you know. So I said, okay, I'm going to bet on myself. And then there was no money for ads, right? Because, you don't have an audience. People don't get, you know, if I don't support these advertisers, then this show goes away. So there was no money coming in at all. And then we started getting ads thanks to the audience that, you know, they're like, okay, if I need socks, I'm going to go get these socks. If I need, you know, for example, Sleep Number, if I need a mattress, I'm going to go get a Sleep Number because Karen's talking about Sleep Number beds, right? And I have one, by the way. You're actually the first person I ever heard talk about sleep hygiene at my conference. I never heard anyone refer to it as sleep hygiene, and you broke it down perfectly. You gave the advice, Dr. Hervé, to not drink caffeine hours before bed. I think you said, like, you know, not after 3 p.m., create a peaceful environment, you know, have cool temperatures in your bedroom, like set up yourself to sleep well. You have to be purposeful about it. You just don't get in the bed and then go to sleep. You have to tip up onto it. And so that was really cool. There were points where, there were points when I looked at, you know, because the hardest thing is to not look left and right, you know, at your colleagues. And you'll say, oh, this person just cut a deal for $84 million. And you go, damn, you know, or so-and-so just got signed and you know they're making a grip, right? And you're sitting there cobbling together some ad dollars. You're like, I'm working just as hard. I'm putting in more hours. I'm like really grinding out and I'm not getting anything. And then you say, oh, these ads, how much are you charging for them? Oh, am I getting a black number? So, but then you have to advocate for yourself. You know, so I didn't just sit in it, but you can only advocate, like you said, when you're in a position to advocate. I couldn't advocate if nobody was listening. You know what I'm saying? If I had 10 listeners and people would tune out as soon as 3 o'clock turned, but because there was an audience, I could advocate and say, y'all need to charge more for these ads, and I need more ads, and here's what needs, you know, like, so then it builds, but it doesn't happen overnight. So everybody who thinks, so I'm co-signing what you're saying, give me a minute to catch up or give me a minute to know the rules and study this game and then watch out, you know, because that's important.
That we've said for a long period of time that you don't let us participate. And I've always felt, you know, that people who do that are afraid of competition because they understand their limited skill set and they understand that if I let these people in on the court with me or in the boardroom or in the classroom, they're going to start kicking all types of behind here, and I'm going to be left outside. So how can I rig the game to stop them from getting in? Okay, fine, you're going to rig the game. But then what that does is it prevents you from developing the skills that you need to make yourself, because when we're on the outside scrapping, we're getting better. We are. We're getting stronger. We're building a tolerance. We're becoming more innovative. We're finding a way because that's what we have to do. When you're sitting as a fat cat and you're like, hey, man, as long as I keep them out, you haven't developed. And so you always have this constant fear. A lot of what we see right now is based on this fear of being replaced. Yeah, I would feel weak and corny too and be scared of people if I didn't have something that I felt I could stand on, if I didn't feel like I could compete. And a lot of what you hear, the rhetoric from the racists and the xenophobes, is people are coming in and replacing us. Dude, if you was about that life, if you was really about that, you'd be like, come on.
You couldn't be replaced. You couldn't be replaced. So why? So there should be a narrative. I wish somebody would do the narrative. You know how they have them talking points? If you are racist, you're just corny and weak. It just shows that you're weak. You're just afraid. You're just a tiny, scared little man baby. You're just so scared. Why is it, like we just need to keep drumming that home. If you don't like this person coming in, it's because you can't compete. Why are you so weak? Is that the kind of person you are for your children? A person that can't compete? Is that how you're raising your kids, to not be able to compete? We have all of these sayings, but it's not really true, because if it was really true, you would just be like, all right, let's bring it in. Come on.
How are you going to come in from another country? You don't speak my language. You're not familiar with the culture. You have no financial footing underneath you, and you're going to beat me? Why would I be afraid of that? Like, there's nothing about that situation that puts you at an advantage over me. And so why would I be afraid of that? So I have nothing to be afraid of. Realistically, you're not my competition. And I always tell that. I have a 14, Miles, 14 years. I always tell him, those people are not your competition. They've already established that you are superior, right? They're afraid of you, and they want to bring you down. If you are about that work, and he plays basketball, so you get on the court, everybody solves things. But the dude that's talking the most, for the most part, nah, he's kind of corny, right? The dude that's really bringing the heat, everybody realizes, and they're like, man, that guy right there. As a matter of fact, I want to play with him more, because if I play with this dude more, I can only get better.
You're going to get better.
If I avoid
Facts.
tear him down, I will always be afraid of people that remind me of him, because I remember that he was kicking my behind, and I can't compete with him. And I'll always try to keep people like him out of the game. And so, I really feel that us as a people, I think we are at a point that we are filling our parents' and our ancestors' visions. We have strength among us. We have built up a certain amount of financial capital by busting our behinds and taking those jobs and doing what we got to do and starting our own universities when we couldn't get into theirs, and saying, okay, you don't want to educate us? We'll do it ourselves, right? What is it that we got to do? If we got to sleep 8 to a one-bedroom house, we'll do it, and then 7 of those kids will go off and make something of themselves. And so now I really like what we're doing now. I feel this is just the beginning. I really do, man. I think our kids' lives will be better, and our kids' lives will be much better, and I don't think we're going to take the foot off the gas. I really feel good, and I'm down for it, but I'm an aggressive dude.
Yes, you are. Yeah, yes, you are. And I love every bit of it.